Hey, good morning. Good morning to actually our second day, our second segment of Rebuke the Devourer here. I am your host, Steve Hansen, and I'm grateful to be on here again. I've got a lot going on today, so I need to get busy and make this happen if it's going to happen. But I really feel compelled to get out here and share this experience and share this health message with others because I know there are so many much like myself, who are suffering with some of these similar things. Just let me grab a picture here. Just last June, this is now May, so 11 months ago, this was me in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I weighed 220 pounds. Today, I weigh around 180 pounds. And I want to share a little bit about that story because it has been such an amazing thing that I've experienced, and I feel so grateful and so blessed with what has happened in my life this past year that I feel just checking my computer screen, making sure this is coming up correctly. That I feel so blessed to have had this experience, and I feel compelled to share it. But this whole business of gaining weight happened to me over about a 10-year period. Not quite 10 years, really about 9 years, but 9 years ago, I started a construction company. I started a renovation remodeling company here based in Provo, Utah. And as a part of that, I started working really, really hard, long hours and hard work. I grew up on a farm, so I was used to hard work, uh, but I had never worked like I had when I started a construction company because the work on the farm, while at times very hard and certain seasons very long, it wasn't something that went on all year long. It was somewhat seasonal. Now we still milk the cows every day, and there were certain things we did every day, but a lot of the pressure work during the fall harvest or the spring planting was just seasonal work. When you get into a construction environment, you can work as hard as you want to, and I found myself doing that in order to make my young company successful. And it was hard to know how to scale that back to something reasonable. And so I just worked and worked and worked. And as a part of that, I started eating in ways that I had never eaten before. And I started gaining 5 to 7 pounds per year. And I started out around 175 pounds. And within a few years, I was finding myself up to 190. And then pretty soon, found myself at a number I had never seen before, and that was 200. Found myself crossing the 200-pound threshold, and that was a pretty scary moment. And I can't remember exactly what year that happened. I want to say it was probably sometime around COVID, maybe even 2019, that I crossed 200 for the first time in my life. And then here, as I shared just last June, I hit a high point of 220. And I'd always been a very healthy person, been able to manage my calories in, calories out, my diet, my exercise. That was the way that I had always approached things. And I had fairly decent success with that. Although as I got older, a few extra pounds started to come on. Even at 175, I was still 20 pounds over an ideal weight, but I was within range. So as I gained all that weight, I started to look for ways. Okay, how can I deal with this? And one of the things that I did was I kind of evaluated my life, and I discovered, okay, I always seem to do really well for breakfast. Most of the time, I eat a whole grain cereal, and often some fresh fruit for breakfast, or sometimes oatmeal and fresh fruit. Seems like a high fiber, good quality breakfast. And lunch, sometimes lunch would be fast food if I was out and about, but sometimes lunch would be, a salad. Lunch varied a lot, but lunch was always reasonable. It was always a reasonable amount of food, regardless of what it was. So lunch, breakfast, and lunch were pretty much in line with where they needed to be for me. What really got out of hand was things in the evening. Dinner would often feel out of hand. I would feel like I was eating everything in sight, and then before I would go to bed at night, I would find myself needing a snack: ice cream, nachos, sometimes both, sometimes other things. And so I was eating likely more than half my calories in the evening and carrying that with me to bed. And so I realized that this was really the time of day when I was really killing things and creating a lot of problems for myself. And so before I had even heard of the word intermittent fasting or even knew what it meant, although most of us can understand what that means, before I had even heard that word, I started this homemade program myself where I just decided, you know what, I'm going to try not to eat after 6 p.m. And when I was able to do that, that was pretty darn effective. That when I was able to do that, 5 or 6 days, out of 7 on a consistent basis, I could start to lose some weight. Not necessarily a lot of weight, but I could lose some weight and I could start to feel better. The challenge would be that it is hard to do that on a consistent basis, especially when you're used to the bad habits. And it was something that I could typically do when things were a little slower during the wintertime. But once things got busy again, that program kind of went out the window and gave way to my hectic schedule. But there were a couple of times in the last 9 years when I implemented intermittent fasting, my own version of it, and I was able to lose 15, 20 pounds one year. Another year, in 2023, I think I lost about 15 pounds, got back down to at that time, which was around 200 pounds. So I had had experience with intermittent fasting, and I knew that that could work for me, but I also knew that it was really hard. It was hard to implement. It was hard to stay on that. It was hard to get the results that I wanted. And then the scary part was, as soon as I let off the gas pedal, and it took a lot of work to stay on the gas pedal, but as soon as I let off the gas pedal, that weight would start floating right back on. That part was very defeating. That part was very frustrating. So when I found myself last June, at a place where I now weighed 220 pounds at age then 58 years old, I started to wonder, am I ever going to be able to lose this weight? Am I ever going to be anywhere in a normal weight range that I want to be in? What do I need to do to make this change? I started feeling that and thinking that while I was on vacation there in Tennessee. And when we got back home to Utah here, and we drove out there to Ohio for a week, did some walleye fishing on Lake Area, and then we went down with family to Tennessee, to Gatlinburg, and spent a week there in the Smoky Mountains, walked the trails, saw the black bears, did all the fun things in Gatlinburg. But and I did something. My daughter-in-law kind of forced me to do something that I was very reluctant to do, and that was take some family pictures. Take some family pictures, standing beside my family and standing beside my wife, and that was the last thing that I wanted to do at 220 pounds. But I jumped in there and I did it because I understood the importance of the family pictures. And I am so glad that I have those pictures, because those are the only pictures I have of myself at 220 pounds, because I would stay far away from a camera in order to avoid that scene. So I came home from Tennessee, determined once again to try the same thing that I had tried 100 times before, and that was to eat less and to move more and to get exercise. And I came home, determined, like we all are, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to try this. This time I'm going to try harder. I'm going to use more willpower, whatever. And what else can you do? What else can you do other than try again? Either that, or you just have to accept yourself. And I wasn't in a place of acceptance yet. So once we got past the ribs and the brisket of the 4th of July, around the middle of July, I started doing some intermittent fasting again. And I actually have this chart. It'd be fun if I just threw this right up on the screen instead of doing it this way. But right here around the middle of July, you can see I started fasting for a few days, and I was past fasting about 14, what was it, 14, 15, 16 hours there, 4 days in a row. Started feeling better, lost a couple pounds, started feeling good about myself, but it's hard to do. And so I kind of, is that fall off the wagon? I kind of fell off the wagon of my fasting there. And then on the 21st, 4 days later, I fasted again. The 21st, let's see, was the 21st a Sunday? I think so. Not sure about that. Doesn't really matter. But I fasted on the 21st, and it was on that evening that I saw a friend of mine speaking on a Facebook Live just like this. And he was sharing his story. And his story was a lengthy one about a stroke that he had had 12 or 14 years earlier. But that stroke led into a lot of other health issues for him, including type 2 diabetes. And his diabetes was getting so bad that his doctor wanted to put him on a third medication. And in addition to his diabetes, he was also about 40 pounds overweight from when I had known him, 25 years earlier in Alabama during the time we lived in Alabama. Daryl was about 40 pounds overweight, getting ready to go on a third medication. And he had heard about this program. He had heard about this protocol, this Feel Great protocol, and decided that he would look into this. In fact, he had heard about it 8 months earlier and had put it off or had ignored it. But when his doctor threatened him with a third medication, he said, you know what? I think I'm going to look into this. I think I'm going to consider trying this instead. So Daryl did that. Daryl got on this program, and involves these two simple nutraceuticals. One is simply a fiber matrix that you drink before your main meal, typically your dinner. The other one is a yerba-based product that you drink while you're fasting, typically in the morning, early afternoon, whatever. Anytime that you feel you need it, you drink this while you're fasting, and you drink this this fiber matrix before your main meal. He talked about how these two products, these two simple nutraceuticals, no medication, helped him to intermittent fast. And he would intermittent fast, 16, 18 hours a day. And I didn't have the diabetes problems that Daryl had. At least I wasn't aware that I did. Probably did. I probably was pre-diabetic, but I hadn't got that message from the doctor. So if the doctor doesn't say it, then it doesn't really count, does it? Seems that way. But Daryl shared there in July how he had got on that program the previous, I think, October, November timeframe, and over a period of about 6 months, he had lost 35 to 40 pounds. But more important for him, he had reduced his diabetic scores to where he was able to get off all of his diabetic medications. And that was an amazing story. And I could tell in his voice and in his demeanor how sincere he was about all this. And I knew Daryl, I knew his integrity, I knew his honesty. And I thought, you know what, if this worked for Daryl, if this helped Daryl intermittent fast and lose weight, and I'm struggling deeply here, I know intermittent fasting works, I'm just struggling to do it. What if I tried these two nutraceuticals? What if I tried this simple program that costs $5 a day? What if I tried this and it worked for me? So I looked these products up online. I purchased them. I could have reached out to Daryl. He could have saved me a lot of money, but I decided to buy them online, and they arrived on July 23rd. And if we look on July 23rd right here, you can see all of a sudden I started fasting, and my fasting got really consistent, and my fasting got really impressive. And let me share some of these numbers with you. 16 and a half, 18 and a half, 22, 22, 21, 20, 16, 24, 15. I fasted 13 days in a row, and the chart will show that I lost 10 pounds. And that was amazing. These simple nutraceuticals allowed me to put my fasting, my intermittent fasting, in turbo mode, and I was able to get my body into the fat burning ketosis state nearly every day for a couple of hours, and that fat nearly just started burning off. And it wasn't any special diet. I was still eating the same normal things during my eating window. It wasn't any extra exercise. I would still play some basketball at the rec center. I would go for walks with my wife, but I wasn't doing anything special as far as diet and exercise goes. I was just simply intermittent fasting, empowered by these two simple nutraceuticals. It was the most amazing physical experience I had ever encountered. And so I kept doing it. I kept doing it. I missed a few days in August because I was rebellious. I was a little reluctant to stay on the program like I should, and I kept thinking, you know what? I think I can do this by myself. I think I'm better now. I'm tougher now. I don't need these nutraceuticals. I kept playing with that idea, and I kept messing up. Excuse me. So finally, around August 23rd, I said, you know what? After I missed 3 days in a row, I said, you know what? I'm not going to mess around with this anymore. I'm just going to stay on this program. I'm going to do it the way I'm supposed to do it. And I'm going to see, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens if I just do what I'm supposed to do instead of being rebellious and defiant. Can you imagine such a thing? So I jumped on there and I started doing that, and my fasting became really consistent then. Uh, during the entire, I fasted for the rest of the month of August. I fasted for the entire month of September, except for one day, and that was my birthday on September 4th. Mark that date down just in case you want to send me a present here for my 60th upcoming birthday. But my fasting got super consistent and super impressive. In fact, if you look at this number down here, my average fast for the month of September was 18.5 with only one day missed. That is amazing. That is amazing consistency. Now, let me tell you another part of this story because the chart goes on. You can see all this blue here, this blue towards the end of September and then on into October. That blue was my wife and I going on a 13-day cruise through the Panama Canal and then also spending a weekend in Key West, Florida. So we left San Diego on September 19th, and we went on this Royal Caribbean cruise through the Panama Canal, ended up in Miami on October 2nd, I think it was, and then spent the weekend in Key West and flew home. I was really interested and concerned about how is this cruise going to go for me? Like, how am I going to manage this program on this cruise with all this free food? I've just lost, I was down 25 pounds by then. I've just lost 25 pounds. It would be so easy. I'm sorry, I pointed at the wrong number. Yeah, 194. I was down 25 pounds at that point before I went on that cruise. How is this going to go for me? It would be so easy to just justify and say, you know what? I'm just going to throw the program out for the window for a couple of weeks. I'm going to go enjoy this cruise, eat everything I want. I'll come home and deal with this when I get back home. That would have been one approach. And that would have been the approach that most of my life, that are really all of my life prior to this, that's exactly what I would have done. But I really, really wanted to stay on this program. I really, really liked the way I was feeling. And I decided, you know what? I don't know that I can do this, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try and keep doing my fasting while I'm on this cruise. And so I would use my products every day. I would drink this product, this Unamate, in the morning. I would drink this Balance product before my dinner. We would have a light lunch, a nice lunch, but a light lunch there on the cruise ship at lunchtime around noon. And then we were able to arrange for an early dinner. So we would have dinner around 5:30. I would have a nice dinner. I would have dessert. I would have something to drink. And I would use my Balance, my fiber matrix before that dinner right there on the cruise ship. And that brought up some interesting discussions with some of the other people there at the table. But the amazing thing is I was able to stay on my program and fast right through that entire cruise. And I came home from that cruise and I lost 3 pounds while I was on that cruise. And that was, and I'll show that to you on the chart. Like when I first got home, it actually showed that I gained a pound. But once the weight settled down from the travel and the airplane and everything else, I had lost 3 pounds while I was on that cruise. And that was just stunning to me. That was when I was like, you know what, this is changing my life. This isn't just, I'm not just losing weight here. I am learning a new way to live and I am changing my life. And I have gone on, and I went on from there, and I'm not going to run you through the whole rigmarole here. I missed a day with the Ohio State UCLA game. We had breakfast at Denny's at 1 a.m. Other than that, you can see I did not miss a day for the rest of the year. And I fasted myself right through here. Uh, November, my average fast was 19 and a half hours. In December, it was 19 hours. October was 19 and a quarter hours. I was fasting 19 hours a day. I only missed one day the rest of the year. How in the world did I do that? Because my previous experience with intermittent fasting said this was next to impossible to do. How did I do that? I used these two simple products. These two simple nutraceuticals allowed me to perform at this amazing level. And I got all the way down to where on New Year's Day, I weighed just under 170 pounds. The other thing that I did, and you'll see that here, 25, 24, 24, 24, I did a 5-day fast to close out the year. I did that because I felt like I could, because I had had enough fasting extra practice that I felt like I think I can do this. I think I can use these products and do a 5-day fast. And I was able to do that. And it wasn't easy, but it was doable. I fasted for 5 days and I got myself right under 170 pounds on New Year's Day. I weighed 169.6 or something. That was a big event for me to see something under 170 pounds on a scale. That was really cool. Um, to carry on, during the month of January, I fasted an average of 20 pounds. The interesting thing was I didn't lose any weight during January. In fact, I kind of moved back up to around 175 and settled in there during the month of January. But the interesting thing is that my belt size, my belt loop continued to shrink. My waist continued to shrink a little bit. I wasn't losing weight, but I was moving weight around. As I worked out at the rec center, I was moving weight around in very positive ways. Um, as I sit here today, I weigh about 180 pounds. But and now that summer's coming in, I'm going to get more focused. I've kind of been on and off my fasting program the last month with some travel and some other things going on, but I'm back on it 100% this week. I just completed an 18, what was it, an 18 and a half hour fast here this morning, and I'm back on my program. But I wanted to get in here and share this story and share this message because this has changed my life in really amazing ways. And I want to get out here and develop this message and develop this mission, this website that I've in this Facebook presence, and share this message because I know there are millions of men right here in this country, in the good old United States of America. I see them at airports. I see them at the rec center. I see them at restaurants. I see them at church. I see them everywhere I go. I see men and women, but my message is focused directly to the men, the 40 to 60 to 70-year-old men who are struggling with their weight and with their health. There are some amazing tools out there that can change your life. And I would encourage you to reach out to me, message me, call me, email me. Let me help you the way my friend Daryl helped me. And your life will change in the most amazing and profound ways if you wrap your arms around some simple nutraceuticals and some simple processes that can truly change your life. So that is my message here today. A little bit of a long one, 24 minutes. Most of these won't be that long, but I wanted to get out here and kind of share some background. I don't see that I have any viewers, but I do believe people will be picking this up on the replays. And if you do pick this up and you do manage to get 24 minutes into this, please give me a like, give me a comment, give me some kind of feedback. Please send me a message and ask me about this protocol. I will be happy to share the information. I will be happy to help you change and transform your life. So with that, have a great day. I'm going to get off and get rolling with my day, and we will catch you tomorrow.